Nick, I'm so glad you wrote that. Can you hear me now? I think I've created, see what happened there. You got to write me and tell me if I'm here, Nick. That's an important part. I always do this, don't I? Let's click this live. We're going to wait and make sure that you say, yeah, I can. Can you guys hear me? Kim, Nick, can you guys hear me now? Is the hearing happening? Am I speaking and can you now hear me? If not, I'm going to restart. Maybe I'll type a comment. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, we've solved it. What a doofus. What happened was I set up the go live here. So the camera was on, the mic was set up, connected to my computer over here. And I was like, I better go to the bathroom, uno mas. I go to the bathroom a lot. And I was like, I got to go to the bathroom so I can get through this filibuster of a live show that I run. And so I put it on mute because I didn't want you guys to have to hear me pee. But then I came back and hoist by my own consideration, as the French say. So they say hoist by your own consideration. I was listening to a podcast today. I listened to a podcast called The Daily Show, which is put on by the New York Times, I think. And they were interviewing someone from France, and he was talking about this concept that's really important in France called laïcité. Laïcité. Yeah, laïcité, which he said that grew out of the fact that for a long time the Catholic Church had a really like oppressive power in France, and then there was the Revolution, which really kind of cleared a lot of that out, ushered in democracy, and that created this concept known as laïcité, which was he said in America people have freedom of religion. In France, the notion of laïcité is freedom from religion. So really that like religion should take no part whatsoever in the public life, the public sphere and stuff like that. And he was talking about how that worked in sort of the 60s, 70s when France was quite homogenous, but as it's, let's fix that. As it's grown and had more immigrants, and at this point has the largest, I think, Muslim minority population of I can't remember what that. Oh, holy crap! It's cold. I opened this window to cool off a bit, and I'm like, "Jeepers, creepers! It's cold here." Anyhow, just an interesting concept. This notion of like freedom of religion, which is sort of America's bulwark, and then in France, laïcité, which is this idea of freedom from religion. And he was just talking about the challenges of that, and some of the stuff they've brought into the space from that. They banned headscarves for a while because that was a religious thing. And then, that had people argue, well, like, actually, that unfairly targets us as Muslims. You're not banning Christian analogs and all that sort of stuff. It's cool to hear an intelligent discussion about it because it's not something I often think about. And those are really complicated matters. Where do we have freedom of expression versus like our ideals as a country versus, like having certain people feel safe and others not, and how do we ensure freedom for all and all of these sort of things. So I found that very fascinating. Anyhow, it's kind of boring conversation for me in this moment, and I imagine for you because I'm talking about something I heard, but not really going too far into it. So let's get into the good stuff. Oh, I'm going to reiterate this. I said this at the start. This mug right here, this Q, is not me signaling a secret signal that I am aligned with or approving or a proponent of QAnon. This says I really believe in Quiney. Go Team Quiney. I'm on Team Q that way. I think QAnon is nonsense and bullshit and frankly fairly harmful. It does damage in the world. So I'm gonna go on record on saying that. A guest saw me drink out of that mug and was like, "Oh, you're into Q as well." And I was like, "No, I am definitely not." Let us nip that in the bud. Okay. Well, let's see. What do we have here on these mega live topics? Oh, I'm going to talk first about some books that are on my bedstand right now. I've had the stack I had initially is very of the Enneagram types. I am Enneagram type 7, which is the eternal child or the adventurer or the idealist. Sevens are known for our, we can look very young or very old. We often look, part of what we do with stress and fear and discomfort is we escape it. And so sevens can often look very young for their age, especially when the ways we escape stress are healthy. We can also look very old for our age when the ways we learn to escape stress are unhealthy. So, for example, like if we go to alcohol or drugs or substance abuse or stuff like that. And part of what sevens do is in their optimism, they expand. They're very idealistic in their thinking. So in their mind, they can expand possibility, they can expand time, they can expand like, oh my God, I've got time for all of this. And so this stack of books is very classic seven. And a coach that I used to use with my clients, not so much anymore, in part because I've moved away from the Enneagram a little bit. But what sevens, we end up with a bunch of stuff, we accumulate stuff. And so one of the kind of a symbolic practice he described was go through your closet, throw out 15% of the things there. Go through your bookshelf and throw out 15% of the things there, and so on and so forth. So I've been working through these books, noticing them on my shelf and being like, oh, those are adding up. It's time to move through them. First is these two books by Derek Sivers that I bought. Derek Sivers, if you don't know, created CD Baby in the early days of the internet because he could not find a way to sell his music online. He was like, this is really frustrating. So he created a solution to that problem. And then his friends were like, hey, I heard you created a way. Can I put my stuff through your site? Like, can you do that for me? And so he started to do it. And before I knew it, he had this incredibly successful early, this is before iTunes or Spotify or any of these streaming services, had kind of like the place that people would go to buy their, to sell and to buy music online. It just didn't exist before that. And so these days, Derek writes, he has a blog, dereksivers.org, and he writes, I find his writing quite interesting. And he writes sporadically. I'm on his list, and he doesn't write often, maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months, I'll just get a post from him. And he's also very open about like, hey, if you like something or if you have a comment or anything, hey, Carla, hey, Andrea. Derek's very clear, like, yeah, write me, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I respond to my emails. And he does, which is always kind of cool. So he announced he was writing 2 books. He's got Your Music and People. What does that say? Creative and Corporate Fame, and Hell Yeah or No, What's Worth Doing. And they're really like a collection of his thoughts, kind of like a collection of essays more than anything, fairly short. The trouble is, it turns out I'm not that interested in reading his writing in book format. So I like it when I get it in my inbox, maybe once every month or every 2 months, but in a concentrated format like this, it doesn't really appeal to me. So these got moved off the book. They were on the book stand, the nightstand, and they got moved off. They're going to be given away, I think, because they're just not really gelling for me. Nothing against him. Next book I've been reading, this one I read on and off, is The 99% Invisible City. This book's super cool. Or at least the podcast 99% Invisible is super cool. What they do in that is they talk about the things, the elements of design. And the idea behind good design is if something's really well designed, you don't notice the design. So the best design is invisible. We don't think like, oh yeah, the reason that door is there, that was well designed. It makes sense that the handle, like, I don't have to think about the fact that when I see that handle, I just reach for it and pull. But a poorly designed door, and you learn this, at least I learned this in my computer science degree when I was studying user interface design, a poorly designed door doesn't communicate to me up front, oh, my camera, there we go, that I should push or pull it. That handle right there tells me, reach for this and pull. Whereas if I see that metal plate on the door, it tells me push against this and the door will open. Bad design does not convey that to you. So bad design would be such where it's got like, those horizontal bars. That doesn't always tell us, is this a push or a pull door? And so it sounds like a really small thing, but it's a metaphor and an example for how subtle good design can be and how we don't realize until we're struck by it in the moment, like, oh, okay, I guess I pull on the door. And that example is like a second out of our life. It's not a big deal. But I find it fascinating to listen to these dorks, Roman Mars and his crew of people at 99% Invisible on their podcast. I find it fascinating to listen to them talk about this stuff. And they'll break into all kinds of interesting places where you'd never imagine design existed. And they created this book recently. And the book really talks about all manner of places you wouldn't really, you just wouldn't consider. So like here's a chapter on towers and their impact. He talks about revolving doors. He has a thing here about what was a really interesting one? Oh, he talked about in let me see if I can find this. In France, here it is. They have something called a Mansard Roof. Where are you, Mansard Roof? You Mansard. Here you go. So this is a Mansard Roof. It's where this is the roof here, and they have windows that break out of the Mansard Roof. So it's kind of beautiful. You've got like a roof, and then it's not just a roof with shingles on it. It actually has like windows that poke out of it. And if you've ever been in Paris or France and walked around, you've probably seen these and been like, wow, that's so neat. The reason that came into existence is because during the days of elaborating taxation and creating this, the way that buildings were taxed was on the height of the building, and it ended at the pinnacle at the edge of the roof. So you'd get taxed for this height, and then the rooftop you didn't get taxed for. And so of course what people learned to do is like, okay, well, we're just going to build a bigger roof and punch windows out, and we'll use this top part and we'll extend the roof. That allows us to pay less taxes. And so they have a whole chapter on how the way we have laws like taxation impact our architecture. And then he goes through a whole bunch of places in the world where you can actually see this. Super fascinating to me. This is the next fiction book I'm going to read by Greg Baer, who writes what's called hard science fiction, which means it's very sciencey. There's a lot of physics and stuff like that in it. And I don't know what's happening there, but that looks cool. Looks like a black hole of some sort. Ooh, or maybe it's a geode. Maybe this is a small geode, and it's just like, oh, geode. I read a fiction book and then a nonfiction book. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about this book, and then we're going to get into the topics for today. You can see we're slowly losing watchers, but that's okay. I'm going to amuse myself. Well, it's only 10 now, so I get this this opportunity. So this book came to me because one of Baer's clients who I'm going to turn a fan on here. One of Baer's clients who I've worked with and partnered with and co-led some coach training with sent me this book. He said, hey, there's a book I've got. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I'm going to send it your way. And then it was like 4 months later, this book arrives in the mail without any note or anything like that, right? That's kind of how it goes. We go to Amazon, we send it to someone, and we forget about it, and they forget about it. And it arrived, and I'm like, why is this book here? And then Bae was like, oh, I wonder if that's from Matt, because he said he was going to send you a book. So I would never buy this book in a million years. The cover to me is totally boring and uninspiring. Like, look at all this fucking text on here. Oh my God, you want me to read all that? The image, I don't care about. I'm not a submarine guy. I'm not really interested in submarines. That image doesn't inspire me. I just look at this and I'm like, that's a story about leadership. Ugh, blah, blah. And then the back and the spine are also kind of like, there's nothing about that. But it sat on my desk and I finished whatever fiction book I was reading. And I was like, well, what's the next thing I'm going to go through? Let's give this a go. We'll start reading it. And I'm about just a little under halfway through and I'm really enjoying it. So I really find, what's his name? L. David Marquette. I don't know if that's lieutenant. No, it can't be because he's surely higher in command than that. But he writes about leadership, and a lot of what he writes about really gels for me. It really lines up. And usually when I see, first of all, a book like this with a cover that I disdain, and someone talking about leadership, my first inclination is, oh boy, is this going to be a rehashing of servant leadership? Is this going to be a rehashing of whatever current model for leadership is buzzy and popular? And is this going to be a conversation about leadership as opposed to creating leadership, as opposed to something that causes leadership, about being leader in the moment? And it's none of those things. It's him really distinguishing what was going on in the Navy. What was it that had people so disempowered in this ship that he was taking over, and what was going to be called for to change that? And one of the big distinctions he comes up with very early on is that the Navy operated in what he calls a leader-follower structure. If you've followed Get Lit, the podcast at all, I've talked about this a fair bit, where the work of leadership is to create more leaders, the temptation, the allure, the seduction of leadership, which is to say, really like the part of the path of less resistance is to create more followers. And he says like that's ultimately what was happening in the Navy is this structure was rooted on like there's a leader and then everyone follows him. They obey him. They do what he says. And he also distinguishes the fact that they, the whole aim, the whole focus, like their whole lens was, did you pass inspection? Did you, and the way they determined that was like, did you fail at anything? So their whole lens was not like, how can we create a remarkable experience, opportunity, moment of leadership result? The whole lens for all of their leadership was, how can we make sure we don't screw up? And that he distinguishes really leads to laziness. It leads to like just doing whatever you need to do to not screw up. And when there's a screw up, what do? You point elsewhere and you breathe a sigh of relief when someone else has screwed up because it doesn't mean you've screwed up and so on and so forth. So I recommend this book if you can get past the cover. It's really quite interesting. He tells a good story. There's sort of like a narrative as he was moving himself towards taking over, taking command of this submarine and then deploying it in 170 days and what he had to make happen in that time. And here, I'll just read you a section. I've tabbed 2 parts of this, so it must be good. So he says, in the nuclear-powered submarine Navy, we focus on errors. We track them, we report them, and we attempt to understand the reasons for them. There is a powerful and effective culture of open and honest discussion about what went wrong and what could have gone better. Great, right? What happens then is that we evaluate ships based on the mistakes they make. Avoiding mistakes becomes the prime focus of the crew and leadership. Just to be really, really clear to everyone, this is how most people show up in our lives. So we are focused on avoiding the breakdown, the mistake, rather than, as he puts it here, achieving excellence, creating the breakthrough, creating the life that we crave and long for. Instead, we put our attention on how do I not rock the boat? How do I not have to go through the pain? How do I avoid all of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Morning, Andrew. He goes on. What happened with Santa Fe, that's the submarine he took over. It was fun how I said that, Santa Fe. What happened with Santa Fe, however, was that the crew was becoming gun shy about making mistakes. The best way not to make a mistake is not to do anything or make any decisions. It dawned on me the day I assumed command that focusing on avoiding errors is helpful for understanding the mechanics of procedures and detecting impending major problems before they occur. But it is a debilitating approach when adopted as the objective of an organization. We are destined to fail. No matter how good you get at avoiding mistakes, you will always have errors on something as complex as a submarine, or, I assert, your life and anything you're up to. You might reduce the number and severity, but there will never be zero. And if you do manage to reduce your life or even the submarine down to some kind of thing that's manageable enough that there never will be errors, holy shit, that is a sad victory you've created for yourself. Oh, Facebook's giving me a new tip. Why are you giving me a tip? Share to groups. Your live video will be shared to, get out of here, Facebook. I don't need that tip. I'm in the middle of a live. Just give me tips. They may be such minor errors as reading a gauge wrong or scheduling 2 conflicting events, but people will always make mistakes. Thus, they will always feel bad about themselves. In the same vein, success is a negative. Success is an absence of failure, avoidance of a critique or an incident. Sadly, a common joke on Santa Fe was, your reward is no punishment. So that's how most of us go through life. That's how most of us lead. So really cool book. I'm enjoying that. I'm going to reach out. He's got his email in here, and I'm going to reach out to see if he's up to come on the live show to do an interview, because I think it's in here somewhere. I don't know where it is. I think he'd be a cool guest to jam on this sort of stuff with and see where we connect and also see where we disconnect. Okay. Well, I've talked about those things. I'm blowing really cold air into my office. I'm going to turn that fan off again. We're here. We're set. Andrew, let me know how that is for you when you read. I'd love to hear your feedback on the spectrums of being. All right. Well, what topics do we have? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Who else gave me topics? Bob gave me a joke topic. Thanks for your joke, Bob. Leaf, thank you for your topic. I'm going to start by speaking about changing your circumstances and how that doesn't change who we're being. And by the way, if you guys have any other topics, please put them in the comments. Like any questions that are coming up or that's live or anything you're up against in your life. That's so much more fun to create this in the moment with you. So why didn't I capture the actual questions? Excuse me. I'm just going to look them up here right quick. We'll have a sip of tea. Click on Adam Quiney there. Scroll down. Hey, I'm looking for the Mega Live. Yes, okay, now we've got it. It's all coming together. So Mia asked this question. Mia, thank you for your question. And she said, I heard you say, Adam, one time that back in the day you were working your day job, law, and studying coaching in the evenings, and you were worn out or some such thing until you changed your attitude and how you related to the situation. I'd love to hear you talk about that attitude/relational shift. So that's not totally accurate. What was happening was when I took a year of I did some coaching training. I worked with a coach. I was starting to build a practice. Then I took the training that actually made a difference in my life, that really plunged me into the depths of myself and actually began my real journey. Up until that point, all of the coach training, all the work with that coach, it was fine. It was nice. I enjoyed it. And it was also just more of me doing the same of what I've been doing as a lawyer and a software developer and a project manager. So my being was not changing at all. The doing on the surface was changing, but that's just the stuff on the surface. And so I graduated from this year, and then I was working about 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 during the day, maybe a little later some days at the law firm I was working at. And then I would walk home. I'll give you the whole day. So I'd get up at about 6. I'd take my new dog, my puppy at this time, out, and he'd pee and poo and do his stuff. Get him back in. Quickly eat breakfast. Walk to the law firm. It was the only exercise I was getting during this time of my life, so I was very diligent about walking to and from it. I would start work. I'd sit down at my desk at about 7:30, and then I'd work through till about 5. And I might walk down to the coffee shop and grab a sandwich and then bring it back to my desk and work while I was eating. But I was, pretty in it. At 4:35-ish, I would leave. I would walk back home, and then I would quickly eat dinner. And then I would sit in front of my computer and either coach people or reach out to people and try to set up appointments and connection calls and all of that sort of stuff, ask people for referrals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would do that usually for 2 to 3 hours, and then maybe have an hour in the evening to like watch a TV show or play a video game or something, and then I'd go to bed and would repeat it. And then the weekends I kept for myself. So the law firm I was at was a little insulated. It was I guess we'd call it intranational. It was a Canadian-wide law firm. But we were a bit isolated on Vancouver Island, which meant I didn't have to do what a lot of my colleagues did when they went to large international firms, which was work weekends and, like working 70-hour weeks, just working to the bone and all of that stuff. I didn't have to do a lot of that. For me, I basically got my weekends to myself and for the most part, my evenings. And so very consistent cycle, a lot of work in that, not a lot of play. And I would get supported by my coach. And at the same time, I was on the leadership team for the coach training that I had just graduated from and was coaching some of the participants and getting a lot of development and training in my own work and being stood for to enroll people in that coach training program, not because I needed to do that, but because learning and practicing enrolling people in that coach training program also developed my ability and my strength and my muscle in enrolling people in my work and enrolling people in the possibility of their lives. So of course I had a lot of resistance to it, but I could also see at the same time, and I got supported a lot to see it this way, to hold it in this particular lens or context. There was an opportunity there. There was a benefit. So that's what was happening. And there came a point where I gave my notice with quite a bit of time, 3 months. And as I was looking out towards this 3-month mark when I was going to be like, all right, it's time for me to leave. I should say, prior to giving my notice, the conversation I was in with my principal, the man I was working with, was he had said, "Hey, I don't want to keep working for this firm. I want to start my own firm. And you're great at this. I like you a lot. We have a great relationship. Do you want to do that with me?" So the opportunity was for us both to go and start our own practice here in Victoria, where I was already living and committed to staying, which was a dream come true. My cohort, the people I graduated with, were like, "What the fuck? How did how did that get created? You're fresh out of law school. Like, what's the deal with freaking Adam?" And so I had shared, I want to, I want to do that. I really want to do that. But there's this thing I'm kind of passionate about on the side I'm doing called coaching. And so my vision is that I kind of spend some time doing that and some time practicing law. Can we make that happen? And my principal, to my surprise, because very edgy, I was very scared I was going to say that. He'd tell me no, and then I'd just have to go along. But instead, I asked for what I wanted, and he was like, "Totally, we can make that work. I'm a big fan of getting my cake and eating it too." Made a joke that that's why he was fat, which made me laugh and feel great. And he said, "Yeah, like what? Maybe a day. You're thinking like a day a week. You'd do that, and then 4 days." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, totally." So I was sort of on cloud nine until it became clear to me I didn't want to do that at all. That wasn't what I really was called to do with my life. I wanted to coach full time. This was all that I wanted to do. And I was saying yes to the practice of law because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to make it work as a coach, that I couldn't do this as an entrepreneur. I couldn't succeed at this. This wouldn't work. I was afraid. I was afraid of that breakdown. And so once I realized that, the benefit of the support I had was I was pretty clear, like, oh, uh, I can't shrug that off. I can't operate over top of that. I'm far too committed to this work to just sort of have that fear and be like, yeah, I'm going to support you with your fear, but don't look in my life. Like that's just I'd been through too much at this point. I'd been supported and trained far too well to be able to look past that. This is the trouble with becoming more conscious in your life is you can see more of the truth, and that makes it harder for you to turn away from your fear and go back to numbing yourself. I still do it plenty, just to be clear. It's just harder. We're just more present to the bankruptcy of that approach. So I was like, I can't do that. That won't work. Fuck. So I was scared. I got a bunch of support, and I got myself to the point where I came and I told my principal, like, look, it's not going to work. The way I see it, I have to take this airplane and I've got to run it full speed down the runway. And I'm either going to smash it right into the mountain face or I'm going to take it off and fly. And I have to do that. And I can't do that sort of driving it at half speed or like, kind of driving it, but then also keeping one foot in I don't know, the hangar or whatever this metaphor works. So I was just like, I have to give this a go. And I talked to Baer about this and she was willing to support that. So now this gets to the point where Mia's asking the question. Because, well, I'll share how that was, first of all. As that deadline loomed closer, the deadline where I was going to leave, a few things happened with great consistency. The first thing that happened was every day I'd wake up and be like, I think I might have made a mistake. I believe maybe today will be the day I'm going to tell Darren, my principal, that I've made a mistake. And actually, I do want to partner with him. Every fucking day, without fail. And some days I would just work, no, I'm not going to do that. Other days I'd get supported by my coach. Other days I'd share that with Bae and she'd be like, don't do that. We're going to be okay. So I had a lot of support around me. And if I didn't have that support, some of the days I'd work myself out, but the rest of the days I would have done it because we're not strong enough by ourselves to overcome our fear over and over and over and over again. That's just like if you look at any great leader, they have people that have their back. And so, or maybe you are, perhaps you are, maybe you're strong enough. You don't need anyone else. You can do it all on your own. That's certainly how I believed myself to be. But looking back, what I can see is like my fear would have defeated me absent all of the support that I had. I had a lot of people standing for me that I'd invested in having them do exactly that. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was with great consistency, I had this voice that would point out and look at and focus on all the things I loved about what I did as a lawyer. And it would sort of, the way it would sound was like, oh man, you're not going to get to be as brilliant as a coach and a leader as you are a lawyer. You're really going to miss this. You love this camaraderie. You love throwing the metaphoric football with Darren when you guys are working through the particulars of a case or formulating an argument. You're going to miss that. And the third thing was how it wasn't that bad. It's not that bad. Look at, yeah, you work these long hours, but you can kind of make that your own and you can do that. And so all of this stuff is so predictable for what will happen anytime we're leaning over the edge and trying to create a breakthrough. That's what I learned in this process is by going through this and getting supported. I kept showing up to my conversations with my coach or the people developing my leadership and being like, here's where I'm at. And I really think that it makes sense. And blah, blah, blah. They'd be like, are you open to a conversation? Yeah, I'm open to a conversation. Great. And then they would just help me look at it. They wouldn't push me down any particular road. They would just ask questions in service of me getting clear, like, hey, is this my fear or is this my deepest desire speaking? What's this really about? What's going on for me? And once I distinguished it as my fear, the one thing I can say is I would be fairly reliable to choose back into possibility. Not always, but fairly. And when I wasn't, they would support me with that too. Okay, so that's all the preface for this. So we get to this, let's say the last week, and what I'm doing is I'm making plans. It's like you've got that winning lottery ticket. You already know it. You haven't cashed it yet. They've got the check coming to you, but you don't yet have the money. And you're like, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini and I'm going to spray paint dickhead on it. And I'm going to like drive it around town and I'm going to buy an exotic animal and all of this stuff. I would never buy an exotic animal. I would never buy a Lamborghini, and if I did, I wouldn't spray paint dickhead on it. So none of that is what I would actually do. But I was doing that. I was doing that same kind of like, now things are going to be different. The circumstances I'm going to be free from the shackles of this job. I'm going to get to do everything I want. I'm going to play Mass Effect 2. I played the first one. The second one, I'm really going to like take this on. What else am I going to do? I'm going to drink beer in the evening. I'm going to do a beer tasting course. I'm going to learn a new language. I was just making plans, making all these plans. It's going to be amazing. Andrew, I'm glad this is landing for you. I'd love to hear from anyone, including yourself, Andrew, like what you're just seeing for yourself in any of this so that it can be a little more of a dialogue. So the week comes and there's a few things that happen. First, I think on the last week, I go and I get my haircut and I wonder if I can find, it's buried in Facebook somewhere, but maybe I'm going to look really quick just to view my profile photo. Can I see, is there a place I can see photos of Adam? Photos. I want to show you the the haircut I got. Because I came into work on that last week and Darren just laughed and he's like, is this your fuck you law? You're on your way out kind of photo? Is that what this is? Photos of me. I'm going to look real quick to see. Yeah, Cami, thanks for sharing that. And absolutely, I don't think I would have. I think I would have bailed out because that was easier and just simpler and it made sense. That's the important thing in all of this is everything I'm sharing, all of those fears, that wasn't like me being dumb or it wasn't like, oh, obviously it's just fear. I just needed, that was genuine. I really felt that. So let's see here. Where is this photo of me with my wild hair? I think I'm getting closer to it. I think we're getting closer to the moment. I'm going to look a little while longer and then I'm going to stop because if it's 10 years back, that's a long way back. Yeah, okay. I don't see it here. Anyhow, if you imagine this mass of hair here, and then like my stylist, which way am I doing it? My stylist, I asked her like cut it kind of like it's basically like a big fin is what I had. It looked kind of cool. It was a bit outrageous, and it certainly didn't. If I wore that haircut into a court of law, the judge would have given me an earful. And I have seen judges give people earfuls. They are not shy about doing that. And it's important that you recognize, this is a bit of an aside, the judge is not giving you an earful because there is a right way to dress and because they know the right way and because blah, 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 blah. That's not the reason that they would have given me an earful. The reason was because as a lawyer, where we are representing to some extent the sanctity of the legal system, the judicial system. And so judges are they hold that like in high regard. You as a lawyer here in this court are kind of modeling the importance of this very holy reverential system that we have created. The rule of law above the fickle rule of man. And so for me to show up with like spikes or whatever, or like a sloppy tie or something, that has people that are not of the legal system, non-lawyers, clients, etc., see that, and it casts dispersions, aspersions. It casts the legal system in a negative light. So that's why the judge would very quickly be like, get out of my court, fix that hair, come back, and then I'll hear your case. They would do stuff like that. So the haircut I had, they would have been quite quick to let me know. Anyhow, I got this haircut. This is the last week. I'm making all these plans, and then I have my last day. I celebrate. It's awesome. And then the next day we go into it's Monday, and I'm starting my first full day as an entrepreneur. I'm just going to read what y'all have written here. It's nice to see you guys in the comments. Hey, Cami. So many people don't have that level of support. Most people have the support that keeps them all safe. I love that distinction, Cami. So we all have a degree of support in our lives, all of us. No one, even if it's a cat, even if your support is this pen and you hold it like this and then you feel better, or a pendulum you hold over your hand, or anything, we all have some kind of support. But to Cami's point, most of the support we have is designed to keep us inside of what's safe. And so the way that might look is like people that want to protect you from heartbreak. Those are not the people that are going to support you in creating breakthroughs. They're going to be the people that protect you from breaking your heart. We have people that will collude with us. So when I'm like, this person over here is being a dickhead, they're going to agree with me and acknowledge, yes, he is. And they're going to listen and be like, that sounds like a dickhead and blah, 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 which will feel great in the moment, but that will not invite me to get more responsible for how I'm creating this experience of this human showing up in my life and me relating them as a dickhead. So I'm 100% on board with what Cami's saying here, which is that many of us have support, and most of that support keeps us safe. It holds us where we are and allows us to feel good and comfortable there, which is not a bad thing. It's just distinct from the kind of support that will have you take the scary step I did, and the scary step that you will, assuming you want to create something in your life like this. Hannah says, this is known as dithering. I'm imagining, Hannah, you're talking about this thing over here in my life is not that bad, and but at the same time, and back and forth. Hannah says, I am such a ditherer too. It's also a characteristic of binary thinking. We get obsessed with choosing one or the other of two options. Andrew, this really shows the humanity of it. The world seems to show this journey to entrepreneurship as some beginning to end process without ever showing the middle. Yeah, right. That's so it. Even if you read like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Robin Sharma's very popular book, or many, many, many of, if you listen to these entrepreneurs or read their books, it as you said, Andrew, it's like, well, just go on Facebook and read people's vulnerable posts, and it's like, vulnerability alert, I used to be poor. Vulnerability alert, I used to be a nerd, and I had to really dig deep. And then I did, and it got solved. And now I do this, and I can sell you that. And it's like, where's the vulnerability, and where's the part where you had to be with it, and it wasn't magically solved? And like, what does even digging deep mean? And so I think we're all craving that honesty. Andrew, are you hearing an animal in the background? There shouldn't be one. If there's feedback, let me know. It might be, I don't know what that is. If anyone else can hear what Andrew's speaking to, can you let me know just so I can make sure the sound is nice? And Mia says, rescuing rather than resourcing us. Yeah, our people will rescue us. They will collude with us. They will comfort us. They will say things like, I really sympathize with you. I remember coming into, I was leading coach training, and I was out of the room. So something was happening in the room. I was out of the room, maybe making coffee for our participants, or who knows, maybe I was calling up people to invite them to our workshop that afternoon, something along those lines. Anyhow, I came back into the room and I saw written on the board, um, I can't remember, Carrie Zurier, a woman I used to lead with, who I love very dearly, had written either, I can really sympathize with you, or it might have been, I'm really sorry for you. And underneath that, she had written, is never a compliment. So that's when I'm sorry for you, that's not me standing for you. That's like, oh, I'm sorry this happened at you. I'm sorry life occurred to you. So anyhow, we finish this day. I start Monday. Everything's going to be different. And then what happens is almost immediately I recreate the exact same circumstances that I had been working prior to this. And I filled my time with stuff that was now no longer law, but I filled my time. So as a lawyer slash coach, when I was in that transition period, who I was being about my time was filling it. And there was a real like scarcity, but it's not the scarcity we normally relate to. It's the sneaky kind of scarcity that a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs have, which is the scarcity of like, I have to maximize my use of the time, which is total scarcity. Because if time was abundant and rich and you related to it that way, you would not need to max it. That wouldn't be I don't have a conversation with you where I'm like, I need to maximize my use of the available oxygen. That's just not how I be about oxygen. So this, I have to maximize my time is a measure of scarcity, even though it sounds like it's speaking to abundance and creating abundance. And what it's really doing is we are bringing the being of scarcity in the hopes and belief that it's going to give us the experience of abundance. So that's what I was doing. I was doing that as a lawyer, filling all my time, filling all my hours, creating voice memos every time I had a new idea. And then on Saturdays, sitting down at a specified time and writing those voice memos into paper, which I would then make a blog post out of. Oh my God, it's fucking exhausting. And then I left law and I brought the exact same way of being. So now time was still scarce. I still had to get a bunch of shit done. It's just that the shit I had to get done was no longer law, so I could then do coaching. It was coaching, so I could then be successful in coaching. Hopefully you can see the surface had changed. The circumstances and the situation had changed. The things I was doing had changed, but my being underneath was the same. Who I was being about time and how I used my time and who I got to experience myself as was exactly the same. So I'd changed the stuff on the surface, but underneath nothing had shifted. Now for a while, to be clear, it was novel and different. So for the first week, maybe 2 weeks, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, yeah, I'm busy, but at least I'm busy doing the thing I want to do with my life. This is good. So I was empowered at first, which is always the way these kind of surface level changes occur. At first, it's novel and new, and it feels like, yeah, I've changed towards something I want, which is true. But the path I was very clearly on that I can see looking back in hindsight was the same one I see a lot of coaches and a lot of entrepreneurs on, which is bedraggled, exhausted, tired, time incredibly scarce, and gasping for oxygen, and then convincing themselves why it's not that bad. Why, yeah, it's tiresome, but like at least I get to do what I love. If your story about your life includes the words at least, I assert for you, and I'm standing for you that there's a possibility of having a life where you never have to use those words. That's my stand for you and for all of us, that we don't have to use the words at least in our story about our life. I was using those words. So as time went on, the novelty wore off, the exhaustion that was familiar showed up, and then I'd be saying things like, oh God, I'm working so hard, but at least I'm doing what I love. And so this is where there hadn't really been a shift. There had been, I'm going to use some big words now, there had been a phenomenological shift. So a phenomenological shift means that the phenomena of my life, the stuff surrounding me, the circumstances, people, situations, things I'm doing had shifted. Phenomenologically, I had shifted, But ontologically, who I was being amidst the phenomena of my life had not shifted at all. And transformation often starts, the alpha and the omega of transformation is often ontologically. It's in the internal state. And so from here, I started to bring this more and more to my coach and be like, fuck, I'm doing the stuff I love and I'm resentful and I'm mad at people and I'm annoyed that I have clients and I'm feeling like, I think even at one point I used the words, if I remember correctly, I can't remember if it was this coach at the time or my current coach. I was like, I feel like a messiah, like I'm everything for everyone and I'm serving all these people, but when is it my turn? When do I get to eat? I'm exhausted. And she supported me to start to see slowly how I was creating this experience and what had me creating it. Like what was the reason underneath that had me doing this over and over and over. That took some time because at first I just wasn't even willing to consider the possibility that this was something I was creating. I was like, no, I have to do it. Help me have it be different. She was like, that's just going to change the phenomena of your life again. That's not going to create what you're hoping for, Adam. Let's have a sip here. And so over time, I started to, with reluctance, be willing to take a look at like, okay, I'm going to set aside how urgent it feels for me to change the circumstances of my life. And I'm going to sit with my coach and be in a conversation about how it is I'm creating this and what I might be getting out of this and what's the underlying story that has me continually fill up more and more of my time. And it would be things like a scarcity of time, a fear that I'm not going to be enough, I'm not going to do enough, I'm not going to succeed, and then reacting to that underlying story over and over and over and over again. And the scary thing was once you see that, the fear doesn't go away. So I still had the same fear that was like, I'm not going to succeed. But now what my coach supported me to see was one, I'm committed to a different experience of life, like one way or the other. I'm committed to that you can create the results you want and the experience you want, and they don't have to be at odds with each other. So what that meant for me was I'm committed that I can succeed. I'm committed to living into the possibility that I can succeed and that I can do so without having to work 16-hour days or whatever I was doing. And two, that what my fear would have me do, which is fill up all of my time and pack my calendar and like at least I'm doing everything, was not actually in alignment with that first possibility that I was committed to. And so I had to take the action that was in the face of that fear, which was like slow down and start to tell people, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you, but I'm not free until Friday instead of tomorrow. When I first started, it was like, you want to have a conversation with me? No problem. I can skip lunch. You want to have a conversation with me? No problem. I can work an extra hour today. I'm going to resent the hell out of you for it, but I will do it. And over time, that started to be like, yeah, I can wait for you for like, we can talk. I'd love to talk. It's going to be a week. And then over time, it started to be 2 weeks. And there was a point, I have more spaciousness in my calendar these days, but there was a point where I was booking people out about 6 weeks. They'd say, hey, I'd love to talk to you. And I'd say, I would love that too. Would you be willing to grab some time in my calendar? And then they'd book something 6 weeks out and be, holy crap, it's far out. I'm like, yeah, I'm really committed to practicing abundance and spaciousness. So that began the ontological shift that I would talk about Mia. And the same thing happened when I began taking June and December off every year. Was I first changed the phenomena. What that means is that I removed all of the calendar appointments that I had in those months. And I was like, everything's going to be amazing. And I'm going to have that time off. And I'm going to learn to play volleyball. And I'm going to write books. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then, of course, I didn't because I hadn't yet created the ontological shift that would have allowed that for me. And so once I created the phenomena, the next step was to create the ontological shift so I could actually be off and I could actually create the experience that I was really committed to creating from taking that time off. What up, John? Nice to have you with us, man. You're committed to a spacious life and a prosperous coaching business. Yes. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I'll say here is that the trap or the stickiness, the tricky part is it's not that I was unwilling ever to work an extra hour or to like miss lunch to bring someone in. So it's not that we're not trying to go from one rule, which is I say yes all the time, all the way to I say no all the time. That shift will help people initially because it's going to force them to start saying no. But anytime we go from an always or nothing kind of thing to the other side of the always or nothing kind of thing, that's not going to create a breakthrough because they're both operating on top of the same thing. So it's less that the work for me was to like, oh, just start saying no to everything. And it was more like, notice this automaticity for you, Adam. Notice this pattern that's always there and start to break the pattern up. So it's not that you always say no. Although at first, for a while, it did kind of feel like I was always saying no. And initially I got quite rigid about like, I am not going to book anyone in my schedule and I'm going to hold it like that. And then I'd created sort of that breakthrough. And then the next breakthrough for me was like, oh, what if I set that aside? What if real spaciousness for me was such that some days I could have no appointments and other days I could have a completely stocked calendar, 8 appointments? How does that feel? Remember, again, we're opening up our possibility to be with all of it rather than like, this is how I'm currently comfortable. I don't like this. I'm going to go all the way to here. And now we haven't really broadened our range. We've just shifted it. It's the same range, just moved over to a different part, not the game that we're going for. Okay. So Mia, thanks for that question. If you or anyone else has any questions about that, I'm happy to elaborate on that. But that'll be mostly where I stop there. That's why I brought this up. I got distracted by photos of me when I was just a young pup at like 27 that were posted on my Facebook profile as I was looking through things, and I stopped checking. Okay, so there's the topics. Brap. Let's have a look here. Let's talk about small talk, intimacy, being with people. This is kind of your question, Andrew, which is fantastic. I'm going to read it. I just want to see what you said, John. You hold them as themes, a North Star, and the pattern shows up. And I'm creating a shift where a busy day can feel spacious. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. So, Andrew, you said you have found that you have a certain level of discomfort in being with people in conversation for the first time. I find there is an easing process as the conversation carries on, but I'd like to be calm right from the beginning. So, me too. I would love that if I just sat down with people and I was never agitated and I never had any concerns about what they thought about me or who I might be or who I might not be. I'd love it if I could go to networking events and I never felt uncomfortable or nervous. But the truth is that that's not how I experienced myself. And after 10 years of pretty deep work, a lot of that stuff's still there. What's changed is my significance about the stuff. So what that means is not that I never have fear, although it has diminished in large parts, but I just step into the next arena, the next bigger game, and oh, there it is. There's that same old fear. What has shifted is the meaning I attach to that fear. So a lot of people attach meaning to like that experience you have of the initial part of a conversation when we're kind of nervous, like first date. We talked on Tinder. Now I don't know, does that thing happen anymore? Talked on Tinder. Now we're going to go on a date. You meet and it's awkward and nervous. And what we tend to do is we make the feeling of awkwardness and nervousness meaningful. And you can fill in the blanks. Here, I'll write it out for everyone. So when I meet someone for the first time and it's awkward and a little weird, that means, and then I'm going to give you a nice underscore, bam. So put some thought into that. Think that through a little bit there. I'll pour a little more tea. This is not for you to answer. I'm going to not move forward until at least someone puts an answer to this. And I want to be clear, this is not an answer where we're looking for like your coachy, leadery self, where you're like, oh, it just means that the universe is blah, blah. No, slap. It's not what you make it mean. Like the part of you that you're like, I wish this person would get over this, that part of you. the part of you that's scared when this shows up, what do you make it that awkwardness and weirdness mean? Uncertainty. Can you be a little more? Because it's also uncertain when who's going to win the lottery, Andrew. But I don't imagine that causes you much angst. So like when you're sitting in that, yeah, it means uncertainty. But like what else? What is the thing that you don't like about this particular type of uncertainty? Let's get a few more people answering that for us before we go forward. I'll sit here. I'm waiting for y'all. While we wait for some brave souls to volunteer what they make it mean, um, I'll share that often, David, John, thank you both for sharing something. Whenever I speak in groups, whenever I do work with groups, there's almost my work as I hold it is like get them into the space, share. Like I need people in the space. I don't want to talk at you. That's the worst I can do. I could do that. You'll probably still get some value, but that's not going to create the same impact as if I can bring you into the space. And of course, people are nervous to do that because what if I say the wrong thing? What if I say something that Adam hammers me? What if this? What if that? All of that stuff. And so at the start of anything like this, I always set the context for people that we're here to talk about leadership. And more importantly than talking about leadership, we're here to have you practice being a leader. And so I want everyone to get the benefit of this context, both now and forever. When I ask a question like that, and I invite you to put something into the space, that is your opportunity to practice being a leader right there. And whatever got driven up, like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, it's a pain in the ass. Oh, I don't know if I had the right, or even just like, fuck, Adam, just get to the point. Whatever showed up for you, that's part of your edge in stepping into being a leader. The leader leans forward. And so I always set that context for people, and then I sit quietly and let them be with the discomfort of that awkward silence until people start to share. And that's how we forge leadership in the moment rather than talking about it so they can then go home and think about it more and then plan to be a leader 20 minutes later or whatever. It just doesn't work. So let's read what you guys have here. You got some good stuff. So David says, I'm growing. When I have that awkward experience, I'm growing. So I'm pretty empowered, meaning around there. John Wilson says, there's something wrong with me. It's awkward and there's something wrong with me. Fuck yeah, me too, brother. They'll think I have nothing interesting to say. So it's awkward and I'm boring. Lindsay said, hey, Lindsay. Lindsay says, I'm not going to be accepted. It's awkward and a little uncomfortable. And that means they're going to reject me. Yeah, Mia, you got to too. I'm boring. Andrew's one is, I really don't know anything about this person from the get-go. And okay, so for you, Andrew, I want you to get clear, like you're still a little intellectual about this. So I really invite you to get down to like, yes, that's all true. And it feels awkward and uncomfortable, but what do you make the awkward and uncomfortable feeling mean about you? And if you're not quite sure where we're pointing, take a look at the other answers that we've got here, because that's sort of where we're aiming. Cami, I'm missing something. It wouldn't be awkward if I wasn't missing something. I must be missing something. Mia, we're not a fit. And Lynn, I'm too much, or I'm going to be too much. So these are awesome answers. I really acknowledge everyone, all of you, for putting something into the space, for practicing leadership, and for just that act of distinguishing something for yourself. Oh, fuck, that's what I make it mean. I make it mean I'm awkward, I'm uncomfortable, I'm robotic, and this person's not going to like me. So from that meaning that I have assigned to that awkwardness, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to overcome all of these with myself, the way I show up. So if I'm worried people are going to find me awkward and not like me, what I learned to do, and yours may be different, but my solution to that was be super charming, very funny, not enough. Great, Andrew. Really great. Great work. I'm going to be super charming. I'm going to be really funny. And to avoid disconnection, I'm going to connect the fuck out of you. I'm going to talk a lot. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions, blah, blah, blah. None of which needs to be there because it's all a reaction to a significance, to a meaning I've created out of this experience. So what if awkwardness is just something that's there? Anytime, like, have you ever taken your dog walking and your dog meets another dog and they're kind of like tentatively smelling each other's butts? They're like, and you can feel their tension a little bit. It's weird. They're like, I don't know if I like the smell of your butt. I don't know if you'll like the smell of my butt. How butt chat with dogs. You get the idea. Does your poo smell good? Apparently it always does. But you know that experience, right? The dogs aren't making that meaningful. It's just a natural part of like coming into new energy. Then we assign a bunch of meaning to that energy, and then we react to the meaning that we've assigned to it. And so what this has us doing is showing up in a way that is fabricated. It's artifice. It's not innate to who we are. It's us trying to fix something that we've determined is wrong. And it's exhausting, and it's draining, and it's tiring. The reason it's exhausting and draining and tiring is because we are responding to something and we are moving out of our natural state. So the most natural way we could be when things are awkward is maybe just to be like, oh, it's kind of awkward. Do you feel awkward? I feel awkward. Yeah. I'm worried in this moment that you think I'm kind of a nerd or that you don't seem that interested in the thing I love talking about, board games. That didn't seem to inspire you. And if we could just be humans about it, the person could be like, yeah, I don't like board games. They're boring. And I'd be like, what? That's crazy. That's so weird. What do you like? Fishing. Oh, I hate fishing. Should we keep talking? I don't know. Maybe like that would be a very natural progression. But we're so scared of all of these things. And because of the meaning we've layered on top of just the innate natural awkwardness of encountering new energy, we can't just be with it. So instead, we do all of this stuff. We show up trying to perform in the conversation, and then we're left exhausted, tired, bored, frustrated, finding this person tedious to be around. So the real work, I say, is simply to be with it. And the way that works is we notice it, first of all. So if you've ever seen film, this is going to be another analogy, old film, not digital, but like analog film, it's a bunch of pictures. And then as you play it fast enough, our eye doesn't distinguish between one frame and the next, and it becomes a movie. So old filmed movies are actually a series of still shots captured. What we want to do is slow down the way you move through these situations such that you can actually look at an individual still shot. So what tends to happen is you move through this so quickly, none of this is something, you can't distinguish any of it. So it's like awkward. The next thing is automatic. You're like, fuck, I'm not enough. Let me just read what you had, Andrew, because this is your question. I'm boring, probably in this conversation and probably in all of my life. Fuck, how do I be interesting? What's an exciting thing I can bring into the conversation? And you're already doing this, and we've moved right through all of it. So the way we work with this is we start by slowing down. And we'd be like, oh, I feel awkward right now. And I think they do too. It feels, the field between us feels awkward. And then we can start to notice, oh, and very quickly, here's me reaching for something inspiring and interesting that I can share. Ah, that's happening. And then, oh no, and if you can slow down and just be with the awkwardness, and then notice, oh, here's that meaning I'm creating about this. And then rather than reacting to any of that, actually making the choice, just turn this phone around, to simply be with it, not to do anything about it. The way Werner Erhard calls this or describes this, or the words he uses here, is if you can let it be, it will let you be. So if you can just allow it to be awkward and kind of uncomfortable when you first meet someone, then you're going to notice that actually you move through that a lot faster than when you're resistant to it and trying to like hold on to it and not have it show up in the space. One of the ways people most don't be with this is by holding that they hate small talk and criticizing people for small talk. I don't like people that do small talk. It's bullshit. That's people that are unwilling to be in this initial awkwardness. So what they've learned to do is like plunge deep straight away. And if you're not willing to meet me there, it's not my problem. It's your problem. Hey, buddy, this is the person that it's as much about you as it's about them. You can't be with them in that initial smelling. It'd be like a dog running up and plunging its nostrils right into the dog's butt. For some dogs that also have learned to go that way, that's going to work for them. But if your commitment is to be able to be with the world at large, then you're going to be alienating and pushing away a whole ton of people. And that's what these people do. And so then what they do is they create a life filled only with the people that can be with them the way they can be with other people, which is totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's just important that we distinguish that that is about contracting the experience of life we get to be with. And since we're here talking about widening, expanding our range, the opportunity is to actually be with our awkwardness and be like, oh, I'm being weird and awkward. I'm going to read what you wrote here, Andrew, and then I'll share a story where I practiced this and how it didn't really go that great. So you wrote here, Andrew, what a surprise this was something I coached someone on. The awkwardness that the other person probably feels in the conversation. Here it is showing up for me. Yeah, of course, right? We get clients coming to us that are up for the same breakthrough we're up for. So I'm very committed to practicing this these days. And it doesn't necessarily mean I get into conversation with someone and be like, it's awkward right now, because that sometimes can add to it, especially for the other person. I can be with that, but I don't know that they necessarily can. So sometimes the practice for me is just to be like, oh, it feels awkward in this moment. Like just to acknowledge that internally and be like, oh, I want to be charming and funny and tell a joke, but I'm just going to be with this person, listen to them, connect with them. Can I breathe a little more deeply? Can I connect and make a little more eye contact? Can I get a little more curious about what they're saying? These are just simple ways of deepening our connection with anyone, awkward or otherwise, right? And then often what happens is if I don't bring the artifice and I just keep being with them, their vibration will drop down to mine because I'm not making it significant and it's awkward. And then naturally they're just going to start to feel more comfortable. And then we're both at a level of comfort and then we can deepen from there. This goes back to the thing I said about small talk. Like if you don't like being with, if you don't like small talk, the best way to not have a lot of it is just to sit with it, to not make it so significant. You can move through it a lot quicker. You'll have a lot less of it, you'll find. So I was at a networking event and it was fine. It was a little bit boring. And I didn't really, at this time, I think it was one of those networking events where I met, maybe you've had this experience. You meet like 5 coaches, 10 financial professionals, and 2 of the organizers of the event. You're like, oh, okay, that's not totally what I was hoping to connect, but it was fine. And I met this person who was very, their energy was very this. So their energy was very pouring out. So that's a little abstract, but you've probably had this experience. Like some people, their energy is very held back and withdrawn. That occurs to us often as shyness. Some people, their energy is quite clean. It's like grounded in who they are. And then other people, their energy is all outwards at you. And so I was with this person who was very outwardsy. And I was like, oh, this guy's like really energetically up in my grill. Didn't mean he was physically up in my grill, but just like that was the energy that he put out. And I asked him like, oh, how's it going? And he was very like, ah. And so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, it's kind of weird. And he asked me, how's it going with you? And I was like, oh, honestly, I'm a little, I don't know if I'm scared or just nervous, a little bored, and I'm not totally sure what I'm doing here. And I didn't need him to fix that. I'm like, I'm going to share my truth. I'm going to be honest about what's real for me in this moment. And he got very caretaky. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't have to be afraid. It's okay." I was like, "No, I know. I'm not." So that what's happening there is I'm not making it meaningful that I've got some fear showing up. I'm just owning that I've got some fear showing up. That's fine. Often have fear showing up. I live a life where there's a lot of fear often showing up for me plenty of times in all sorts of ways. There's often plenty of boredom in my life, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't have it like I shouldn't be that. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's there. That's how it's going. He has it be really meaningful. And so from his making it meaningful, he's trying to help me not have this problem. He's trying to make sure I know it's okay. He's trying to fix it for me, which, as you can imagine, felt like someone putting their hand down my shirt. I'm like, get the fuck off of me. Leave me alone. And the point in this is that he's okay doing that. That's part of what we are willing to be with if we want to live a life of authenticity and of putting ourselves into the space and really being practicing truth and connection with people. Some people, your energy is going to draw them out into the space, and other people, their energy is going to come at you. And by you staying sovereign and just owning your truth and not making any of this stuff meaningful, they're going to see something happening over there unconsciously, and it's going to have them come back into their body. That guy, I could have stayed with him for longer, and I wasn't interested in it. I was like, okay, he's up in my stuff, and he's really stuck in this sort of cycle. I'm just going to let him be. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go talk to Bae. So that's what we do with awkwardness. That's the work there. Let's see. What did you write to me, Leaf? Leaf wrote a question, and I just want to see if he asked me to. Okay. So I want to talk about reciprocal energies, and I want to talk about what was the other one? Passion and the intensity of seeking fun. And then we're going to wind down for the day. And then next week we have a live coaching show. So that'll be a good one too. So, oh, before I do that, before I start talking, if any, I'd love to, who has a story where you've tried to practice something like this? So you've tried to practice authenticity or sharing a truth. You've kind of like leaned out onto the skinny branches of your own practice of what's comfortable in terms of expressing yourself, and you've had it not go quite the way you wanted it to. So sort of like that guy, not doing anything wrong, but trying to make sure I knew I was okay and nothing needed to change and I was a totally okay human being. I'd love to hear some of your own stories. So if you'd be willing to share in the comments, just any situation where you've had that, even if you're watching on replay, that'd be cool. Nice to get some of that community. So let's see. Let's talk about. I'm going to hit Leaf's question first because I think I have a little bit less to talk about this. So can I grab this comic and then drag it into these comments? Boom. Did that work? Will you let me drag a GIF into here? Oh, that did not work at all. That's annoying. Okay, well then I will take this. Oh, that's not going to work either. Here's what I have to do. Here's the Calvin and Hobbes comic that Leaf mentioned. And he said this was about like having fun and the intensity of passion. So I'm just going to read this comic first so I can absorb it. You can follow along if you want there. So Calvin's saying, I'm not having enough fun. He says, I'm just having a little bit of fun. I should be having lots of fun. It's Sunday. I'm going to read it. It's Sunday. I've just got a few precious hours of freedom left before I have to go to school tomorrow. Between now and bedtime, I have to squeeze all the fun possible out of every minute. I don't want to waste a second of liberty. Each moment, I should be able to say, I'm having the time of my life right now. But here I am, and I'm not having the time of my life. Valuable minutes are disappearing forever, even as we speak. We've got to have more fun. Come on. And then they're in the last pane running, and Hobbes says, I didn't realize fun was so much work. And Calvin says, sure, when you're serious about having fun, it's not much fun at all. I'm a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes, and I think Gary Watterson, I think it's Gary Watterson. Is it Bill Watterson? Anyhow, Watterson, I think is absolutely brilliant. Just a genius comic, hilarious, touching, so profound. And So Calvin's really exemplifying that scarcity that I talked about, right? Like it's a scarcity of time here. I only have this much time to have fun. And he's also got a story about how and where fun can happen. So fun can only exist during Sunday. There's no capacity for him to have fun at school. Instead, he's got fun put in this little box, and then he has to optimize. He has to maximize the amount of fun available in this little box because, frankly, the box makes fun pretty scarce. Whereas as coach, if Calvin came to me with this and he was like, I want a life filled with fun, Adam, I would be inviting him to notice how he's got fun set up, how he's got it limited, and supporting him to see like this opportunity. What if you could have fun every moment? What if that was always available? That's not where we stop, but that's the before we can go any further down the road, Calvin has to be open to the possibility that fun could be available moment by moment, that every moment could be rich and available and fully expressed and all of that stuff. Now, I guess it's also important to say that's possible, provided that your highest commitment is fun. And as kids, that is. Usually, that's our most highest commitment. For a lot of us that are here on this planet to make a difference, to create transformation, to do some kind of work, we're committed to something beyond just fun. Just like I'm committed to something beyond just feeling good. I like feeling good, but I'm committed to more than that, which is why at 5:30 in the morning when my alarm goes off, I get up and I meditate and I write and I exercise because I'm committed to something more than just feeling good. If my highest commitment was feeling good, I would sleep in and I would not ever get up by my alarm. And I wake up when I'd wake up, and then I would do whatever I felt called to do that felt good that morning. I would write probably a post every 2 weeks. That would be my guess, give or take, along those lines. And that's fine. If that was my highest commitment, then I would probably be empowered by that. I'm just committed to something other than simply feeling good. And so it's important to distinguish here for Calvin, like, yeah, you could find a way to have fun in every moment. And if that was your highest commitment, it might come at the expense of you learning something in school. And we could, as we start to do this, we can get into like the trouble of this is why you wouldn't coach a child because they don't really have agency. And, it's not Calvin's job to empower school unless he really wants to, and blah, blah, blah. So we're not going to go too much further down that road. But um, this is the nature of being a human. And one of the things I loved, Bae and I went to Cancun like 50 million lifetimes ago. I think it was not last October, but the October before that. So what's that? Almost a year and a half ago to do work with Werner Erhard, who founded the Landmark Forum and Erhard Seminars Training, EST, and all sorts of stuff. Brilliant man, huge heart, has made mistakes, has gotten responsible for those mistakes, and has a lot of he's my belief is he's maligned by a lot of people that in my experience are incomplete about how he's shown up. And if someone were to bring that to Werner, he would be absolutely willing to receive it. So I hold him in very high regard. And he was one of these people who for me, I was like, boy, I can't keep putting off going and working with this man because he's 82. He's not got a lot more time. So we went down there anyhow. And they were they were starting us off and they were sharing, look, this is going to be very heady. Like you're going to have to generate a degree of intellectual strength. It doesn't mean you have to be Albert Einstein. It means that you're going to have to put thought into this. And it means we're going to put stuff in front of you that's not going to jive with the way you already hold the world to be. Here's how you hold the world to be. Here's the opportunity that we say is available as leader. And you're going to have to let go of your attachment to how the world is so that you can reassemble this and integrate what we're going to put in front of you. And that's going to require some intellectual fortitude. So you're going to have to be willing to stick with this, even though it feels uncomfortable, even though you might want to distract yourself. I love how they're setting this up. And then the guy said, this part's hard. This isn't the part that's fun. The part that's fun is whenever it's fun. this is probably not that part right now. And so he's being really clear, like, this doesn't have to be fun in this moment. The part that's fun is when it's fun. It's an invitation there for us to be with whatever is currently being experienced in this moment. Calvin's holding the world like it should always be fun. In part, I assert because there's this story he's got that there's not enough fun. There's a scarcity of fun, and so he has to maximize for it. But in this work with Werner Erhard, what we were doing was really getting to the place where it's like, we're here for a purpose. And that purpose has space to allow for it to be fun at times and challenging at other times and all of that. And what we're here for, our highest commitment in this moment, is to achieve the purpose we're here for, which is the ability to be expressed as our natural selves as a leader. Sometimes that'll be fun, and other times that won't be fun. For me, that was a really powerful way for them to simply own, like, here's how it is. This is what it'll be like. Let's see what you guys shared here. Anna, you said it happens a lot that people try to comfort or fix you, actually. Yes, right? So when you practice vulnerability, they're like, oh, don't worry, it's okay. I got that a lot early on, too. And then I learned to be responsible for that. So initially I was like, fuck you, I'm practicing authenticity and you're making it mean something. And then as I got supported by my coach, I could start to see like, oh, there's a way I'm sharing my authenticity that leaves people with the idea that there might be something wrong. And there's always going to be some degree of that, but I could really see something for myself in the way I shared it that I shared it without necessarily distinguishing much, without much to help them see like, oh, this isn't a cry for help. This is Adam showing his work. And so on and so forth. So we can always deepen our work. Andrew, you're saying you think that has definitely been my motive to reframe the negative into the positive for others. I'm seeing it as more of a tool, but looking to be more intentional in just being with the people that I get to talk with. Reframing is it's one of the favorite tools of the people that believe themselves to be coaches when they are doing nothing of the sort. This is not an attack on you, Andrew. I want to be very clear. But what I'm saying here is that reframing is like this. It's not raining, it's growing sunflowers. It's like, you don't have to be with that. You could hold it this way. And it's the automatic go-to. It's the thing people reach for, both in their own lives and in other people's lives, to like fix the way they feel, both themselves and other people. Oh no, Roger's sad because he lost the game. But Roger, you could hold it like you're growing. Now you don't have to feel sad because you're growing. Or I don't like goals. I like experiments because blah, 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 blah. And what that need does is it stops us from being with whatever's there for us to be with. So it's like, yeah, you can always hold it like you're learning or growing or something like that instead of losing, but then you're never going to gain the capacity to be with losing. And part of life is we lose sometimes. Yeah, you've got a bunch of significance you've attached on top of losing. Like, oh, losing means I'm a loser and I suck and I'll never excel. But taking that off, there's still losing to be within our life. And so that's one of the things when people just decide that they're a coach, that's one of the things I see them doing so much. And they do such a disservice to themselves, to the people they're working with, and to the coaching profession as a whole. To the coaching profession as a whole, because it leaves people with this idea that that's what coaching is. They do a disservice to their client because you're taking away your client's power. You're fixing it for them. You're helping them bypass the thing. This is what I said when we have support around us that sort of colludes with us rather than supports us to be with what we don't want to be with, which expands our range. And we do a disservice to ourselves because we hinder our own growth whilst calling it growth. And what that does is it's the worst of both worlds. It stops us from expanding and it convinces us that what we're doing is expansion. And so then we're locked, we're stuck. Now, that's not to say there's not a time for it, just that is the default kind of always on automaticity approach people have when they're like, we're all coaches. I'm a coach too. My best friend's a coach. Like, they really miss this opportunity, and the harm might be too strong a word, but the disservice that gets done in this. Okay, let's talk about reciprocal energies, gaslighting, and narcissism. The notion of a reciprocal is if I took a number like 3/5, its reciprocal is 5/3. And if you multiply 3/5 by its reciprocal, you get 1. This is neat to me. Any number multiplied by its reciprocal always equals 1. So it's a little bit, I think of reciprocals as like the yin and the yang, the white with the black, and then there's also part of the white in the black, and there's part of the yin and the yang, and vice versa. And together there is wholeness. Together there is oneness. So people get up in arms here. They're like, I don't want a relationship where I am not whole until blah, 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 blah. And that's fine. And if that's true for you, I don't want to disabuse you of that notion. Instead, what I want to invite you to do is to set down the attachment to that story about what you do and don't want, so you could get the benefit, the opportunity, the possibility of this distinction I'm going to put into the space. So as long as you're holding like fuck oneness, fuck wholeness, I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. It's like, great. I don't have any desire to change that for you. I just see that that's going to get in the way of what you might want beyond this, if you're interested in something beyond this. So when we multiply reciprocals, we get wholeness, and I will use, for the purpose of distinction, the statement, the claim that in relationship, we meet the person that allows us to create that yin-yang kind of wholeness. That idea that chaos alone or stillness and the void by itself is lacking something, and that the truest sense of wholeness is when they come together. That's how relationship works. That's how life is grown. That is the polarity of life and existence. And what I notice happens in relationships, and this is really the heart of imagotherapy. If you're not familiar with imagotherapy, the book you might want to check out is Getting the Love You Want by, what is your name? I always get it wrong. Harville Hendrix. It's on my shelf somewhere. I don't know where it is. Harville Hendrix, Getting the Love You Want. Let's put this down here. What's up, Miles? Nice to have you with us, man. Getting the Love You Want. Beer, beer, beer. There you go. Excusez-moi. So the heart of this approach to therapy and this idea is that we will naturally, without any conscious attempts by ourselves, seek out the partner that is our reciprocal. People will tell you, I don't want a partner. I don't need this. I don't do that. Yes, you do. And the more you insist you don't do it, the more you are blind to the tendency to do it. It's not, people at this point, when hearing this, are often like, well, how do I not do that? You're screwed. This is what you will be drawn to. This is why we have a type. Our type is our reciprocal. We are drawn to that energy. That energy, in a way, meets us. It is like a key in a lock. And so, hey, Heather, nice to have you with us. We cannot avoid it. I mean, you could avoid it by living in a cave and refusing to blah, 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 but your energy will naturally be drawn to the reciprocal to it. And so for those, something that's kind of interesting is like for those people that are like, not me, I don't want blah, 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 I'm uninterested in that. The conversation I'm always curious about is like, I wonder what kind of energy they're drawing to them as the reciprocal to that. Kind of interesting, kind of curious, right? Like, oh, even that insistence that I don't need anyone is going to draw a reciprocal to me. Now, it's not a perfect one-to-one kind of thing. You're actually going to draw people that have a little bit of the same energy as you, as well as the reciprocal to it. What that means is that like attracts like, and like also attracts almost opposite. The opposite of the reciprocal. And so let's actually, I'd love for you, two people. So I want two people to just put what is a particular kind of energy in people that people might bring into relationship. So this is the part I'm actually going to go to the bathroom, and you guys are going to have to put something in the comment. So give me 1 to 2 types of energy that you notice showing up in a relationship, a way of being, a type of energy people bring into relationship, and then we're going to work with that. So I will mute, and I'll be right back. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, we got some good ones. Thanks, guys. You guys are doing awesome. So let's work with these. Oh, so many good ones. I love this. So we could go through each of these and get clear, like, oh, that terrified me. The actual feed on Facebook lags a little bit behind what it shows me. So I sat down and then I saw someone come through the door, but it was me coming through this is why I don't want to do time travel. It's too scary. So what might the reciprocal energy be to someone who is very chaotic, messy, all over the place in their lives? Maybe someone who's incredibly meticulous and very controlling and very like exacting, right? Probably that person with a lot of chaos might also have a lot of spontaneity. And the reciprocal to that is going to be someone who's very linear and fixed. And like we do things according to the schedule. I don't know why the first word I picked is an exact description of my relationship. Not so much these days, but certainly early on, that would be a good way to describe it. So hopefully you guys can see like, oh, of course, the chaotic person is going to be drawn to this person who seems to have everything together. And the person who's got everything together is going to be drawn to this person who has this fluid ability to be with life and be spontaneous. And then over time, they're going to resent the fuck out of each other for these ways that they show. Why can't you be more organized? Why can't you be more free and spontaneous? So it goes back and forth. Let's look at needy, the one that Mia's got here. So neediness, we've got one person who their energy is like, oh, I need you, I need you. The other person is going to be predictably very like, I don't need anything and I don't need anyone. And that way they're going to have a perfect match for each other. The one person who doesn't need anyone will almost like cherish this person who's like, oh, your love matters so much to me. And then over time, they're going to resent them for the clinginess. And the person who's needy is going to really cherish this person's ability to not need anyone at all. But then over time, they're going to start to resent that person for the fact that they never actually like, they're very selfish is how it occurs. Let's go over a couple more, and then I'm going to talk about the examples I've got. Yeah, so Anna, you've got no responsibility sort of victim. So you'd have one person in the relationship where life happens at them. It's never their fault. And you're going to have the other person on the other side. They're responsible for everything, and it's always on them. This is a big in adult children of alcoholics. This is a really common trope. It's on what they call their laundry list. Their laundry list. Let me see if I can find it. ACOA laundry list. I'm just going to post this here for all of you because it's a great thing to check out if you're sort of like, oh, I want to do some work. And, you know, sometimes you just see yourself in some of this stuff, which can be really helpful. You don't actually have to do anything with it. But like the laundry list, 14 traits of an adult child of an alcoholic. And these days it's also and dysfunctional families. And they say, so the first one is we live life from the viewpoint of victims and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. So that's one side of it all victim. It's not my fault. It's happening to me. And then number 6 is we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. And this enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. So perfect reciprocal, right? Comes together just like that. We could go through all of these and probably see all of them. Sharafat, great to have you with us. It's a bit late on that question, so we'll come to that next week. The two things I really want to talk about then from here are gaslighting and narcissism, which are common complaints that show up in relationship. People are like, all men are narcissists. No, they're not. First of all, no, they're not, because the world's abundant. And anytime we're putting anything on all people, well, that's kind of limiting the abundance of the universe. But more importantly, all men, all women, whatever it is, right? I'm just going to go with men because that's where we started. The real thing here is all the men you are attracted to are narcissists. Why is it that you are drawn to narcissists? What is the reciprocal to that narcissistic energy that you are bringing to the relationship that has you be unable to resist it? And so for the narcissist, that would be like extreme willingness to take, let's not even talk about clinical narcissism because that gets a little bit too far down the road. But let's talk about people with narcissistic tendencies or just people that show up in a way that we would throw that label at because we're mad at them. So this would be people that love the spotlight and seek it out and take up space in the spotlight and relish in being seen and heard, and they want to be the center of attention. The reciprocal to that would be someone who also wants that, but has learned to keep themselves small, to not shine their light, to turn their light down, to show up mousy and quiet and not make big waves. And they're going to see that person over there on the other side of the same breakthrough they're both up for and be like, oh my God, look at how they're willing to just shine and take up space. It's so awesome. I love that about them. And the person who takes up all this space and always feels like they have to be on is going to look at this person that keeps themselves small and be like, oh my God, I love the way that they're willing to just be in a space and not have to be on. How do you do that? How do you just be in a room and not like feel like you have to bring the Adam show to it? The last one is gaslighting. And gaslighting is it's a really challenging word because when we accuse someone of gaslighting, what we're saying is this person's manipulative. They, what are they? They're manipulative. They are fooling me, and they do that for gain or in such a way that leaves me feeling a little crazy. The first problem with that is it assumes a lot of malice. See you, Sharafat. Thanks for being with us. It assumes a lot of malice, a lot of intention, and it assumes a lot of awareness on people's parts. And my experience is that by and large, we're totally unaware of our stuff until someone points to it, and then we usually argue with them. No, I'm not. And then they end up working with a coach or a therapist or someone, and slowly over time, they can come to terms with this. But for the most part, people are not aware that they're doing this. People in abusive relationships do not relate to themselves as the abuser. That's my belief. I don't believe that for the most part in an abusive relationship, someone's like, yeah, I'm an abuser. Yeah, that's what I do. I know it. They might have moments like, fuck, I'm being like, what I'm doing is abusive, or, oh, I really don't want to do that. But I don't really believe people operate through that lens. Like, yeah, I'm abusive. I'm an abuser. And so with gaslighting, it's problematic. One, because it suggests that they're aware of it, and two, it frees you of having to be responsible for anything other than labeling them a gaslighter and leaving. And what that does is it takes away your responsibility in this. It takes away your ability to be like, hang on, why is it that I keep finding myself into these relationships with people that I'm accusing of gaslighting? What does that get me out of? What about that provides me something, some kind of justification, some kind of safety, something energetically? There's some payoff that has people going towards that. So the opportunity in all of this really is to notice our complaints in relationship about the one we're with, and then to take a look and see like, hey, what's the reciprocal to that energy? What is it that I'm bringing? What is it about that that's so irresistible to me? And what has me drawn to it time and time again? And from all of that, what's here for me to take on? So look for the reciprocal. There's magic in that. And usually when I do work, I sometimes do work with couples because that's what the universe puts in front of me. So people come and say, hey, I love the work you do, but I think it wouldn't work just for me to do it. I want to do it with my partner. And so we'll create some structure, like maybe I'll work with them one week and then their partner the next week, and then we come together, or we'll work with the couple for a while and then do 3 months with one and 3 months with the other, whatever it happens to be. And often in those relationships early on, what we're doing is supporting them to see this nature, this reciprocity that exists naturally in every relationship that gets created, and how the thing they are resenting and holding contempt for is actually at the same time as them being resentful of it, they're also dependent on it. And slowly untethering those things, they can start to see their own work in the relationship rather than the work their partner needs to do. Because y'all can see that, right? We're all really good at seeing the work our partner needs to do. That's not so hard. It's the stuff on this side. We're like, ah, snap. Right, that's my work for me to do. My partner's always asking me to fix their computer. Huh, what does that provide me? Well, it lets me always make sure I feel valuable. It lets me feel like I'm the one without you. You get the idea. You can go down this path as much as you want. All right, well, let me have a sip. Um, what do I want to plug? I'm going to plug some stuff. Uh, I want to, first of all, it is tough work, Andrew. This is the hardest work. Many spiritual practitioners hold that relationship is the highest spiritual practice. And the reason for that is relationship, romantic relationship especially, is the closest we get to with another person. And it becomes the easiest place to point over there. It's the clearest mirror, but it's also like every time you point to something in a relationship that has a reciprocal, you're not wrong about what you're pointing to. Someone pointing to gaslighting is not wrong that they're doing that, but they're also missing the fact that they are creating circumstances where they step into being gaslit. And so even if this partner takes on all that work, the other partner is still going to they're going to set this person up to create the circumstance that they're complaining about. And so we keep like, you need to do this. And that is an abdication of our leadership and it just doesn't work. So it's so challenging because what you can see in your partner, you're right. You're right about, and it doesn't make a damn difference because the work that creates magical shifts in relationship are our own work on our side and then two body practice where we're actually practicing in the moment, creating intimacy with our partner and noticing what's showing up and getting in the way. It's a lot of the work Baer and I do with our teachers, and a lot of the work I've been doing with people lately is not just one body practice where they're taking on their own work, but then also bringing themselves together so they can be in two body practice and notice the energetic dynamics that are coming up in the moment, supporting them to move through those. First thing I want to plug is we got I've hired these people to go through and kind of update my podcast posts on my blog. So I'll just get a link here, make sure that works. And I'll stretch out my jaw because it's a little tight. Here we go. Here's one example. So Andrew, if you ever want to create that, I'm happy to support you with that too. More than happy to just have a conversation with you and your partner and we can actually create that together so you get an experience of it. So anyhow, I've been doing Get Lit for, I don't know how long, 3 years, maybe 2 years. I don't know how long it's been. And what I do is I record the podcast, we put it on the website, done, fuck off, share it to social media, be gone. And I hired these people because I was like, I'd like a bigger audience. I think the content's amazing. The people that listen to it love it. And it's like I found this on the web for how to use. Hey, get out of here, Siri. Nosy. And it's like a well-kept secret, which is neat until you're like, I don't want to be a well-kept secret. I want to be a widely dispersed secret. And so I hired these people I was like, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, the best thing is that we take your episodes and we make them much more accessible for a search engine, ultimately. So we take the text, we take the title, we take everything you're talking about and we put it on a post so that then, because a search engine can't search an audio file, it can only search text. So it just makes it so people that are searching for like leader and victim can find your post about being a leader in the context of victimhood much easier. So it's not we're trying to hack Google to make something happen. It's that we're just making it easier to be discovered by something people are already using. So I've just posted a link here to an example. And what's cool about this now is that you can, if you're not a listener, if you like to read content more, you can do so. The whole transcript for the podcast is on these pages. And we've got links you can click if you're like, oh, I love that. I want to tweet that out. You can do that. Pulled out stuff. And at the bottom of every episode are the important links. So if I've mentioned books, if I mention an episode, if I've asked you to email me, it's all there at the end in a little important links thing, which is so cool. I love the way it looks. And I think it, for some people, we're like, oh, I want to quote something or I want to remember that thing, but how do I find it? Well, now you can search it. So check out the podcast section on my website. It's slow doing this. We're slowly going through all the back catalog and fixing that up. And at the same time, they're doing new episodes. We're getting that worked out. And eventually we'll have it all carried over to this new format. So if you've not ever checked out Get Lit, I'll just get you a link to the Me Lab podcast. There it is. Highlight, copy, paste, download. Bam. That just shows some of these basic things. I don't know that we've actually updated some on the front, but that is where the podcast is. You should definitely check it out. It's 20-minute conversations usually, and we talk about leadership as a way of being and distinctions that are intended to support you to be leader today, to get into the practice of being leader now, rather than once you attain the position, or like rather than conversations like, how do I have a difficult conversation? We support you in having a difficult conversation. So a lot of it is getting past the reliance on not knowing how to stay safe and into actually living your life as a leader. Cool shit. The other thing I'm going to start plugging is the next iteration of the Creating Clients course. So we're 5 weeks through our 10-week course right now with our current batch of people. We have 16 people going through it. Andrew, some of the other people that are here have gone through it. It's awesome. It's a very low cost course. I can't remember what the rate is in this moment. It's either I think it's just $1,000 USD. So if you're kind of like, man, I want a little more of a deeper relationship with Adam, part of the reason I created this course, well, I'll share the two reasons I created it. One is to provide an opportunity for people to do that. So it's not like, how do I scale this mountain of Adam's fees and all that? You don't have to worry about that. Here's a way to begin being in relationship together right now. And then the other reason I created this is because I noticed that the coaching profession, and frankly, sales in general, but especially in the coaching profession, sales are separated out as the thing you have to do to get to do the thing you want to do. And so then people, because that's how it's held, not just by coaches, but by the body that regulates coaching, that's how people hold it. And they're like, okay, I have to do this thing I don't like to do. What's the best way to minimize my time there? And then they spend their energy getting good at it so they can spend less time in it. They hire people to be in sales conversations. They blah, blah, blah. And all of that reinforces this separation and this idea that you have to do something you don't like doing. And all of that eliminates the possibility that selling and enrolling people in your service and product could be every bit as rich and delightful as whatever the thing is that you say you love doing. And so what we're doing is shattering this false dichotomy and bringing them together and integrating them. And if you do that, that's where prosperity exists. Because now there's no longer like, I have to get good at a thing I hate doing. It's really your life becomes, how do I go and be myself in relationship with people? How do I deepen myself and my ability to be fully expressed? And from there, create prosperity. And that is a fucking sweet life. That is creating an incredible life that has bolted onto the side of it a lucrative profession. And that's what we're about. Oh, I love that. And Andrew shares, thanks, Andrew, for sharing that. It's an awesome experience. And you also get to be in a great community that supports you as well. So it's not just you being self-led. We're really going for an all boats rise approach. And you'll meet some amazing people and create some really cool friends. And on the other side of that, you get to be a part of our community that's slowly growing of people that are deep in this kind of work. So you get to be around and in transformational conversations that might not otherwise be available. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. I'm going to play some video games today, and I've got a few more calls, but for the rest of the day, it's pretty late. Love you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks. Some shout outs here. Thank you, Andrew, Heather, who else? Sherifat, Leaf, Lynn, Miles, Mia, Anna, Natalie, and Anyone else? Scroll back a little bit further. Am I forgetting anyone that deserves a shout out? Oh, John. And I think there was a David here as well. Thanks everyone for your comments and for hanging out. It's so cool to get to do this. What a treat. This is just life that we get to spend this time together. Oh, thanks for being here, Lindsay. I hope you're doing awesome. Okay, love you guys. Bye for now. See you next week.